What I'm about to tell you will shatter everything you think you know about the spiritual war happening around us. Not because I'm some prophet or theologian, not because I have all the answers, but because 3 years ago, at 2004-3 in the morning in the middle of the Nevada desert, I helped an extraterrestrial being escape from a crash site. And what he told me about demons, about the forces that hunt our souls, changed everything I thought I understood about faith, about evil, and about why we're really here. My name is Marcus Webb. I'm 58 years old, and before that night, I was a dead man walking. Before we go any further, I want you to do something for me. Drop a comment below and tell me where you're watching this from. Tell me your city, your country, because what I'm about to share with you isn't just my story. It's happening everywhere, to everyone, and most people don't even know they're in the middle of a war. And if you've ever experienced something you couldn't explain, something that touched the edge of the impossible, share that too. Subscribe if you want to hear more stories like this, because the truth is stranger and more terrifying and more beautiful than any of us were taught to believe. Now let me take you back to that night, October 17th, middle of nowhere, Nevada. 40 miles from the nearest gas station, 80 from anything you could call a town. I worked night security at a decommissioned Air Force radar station, one of those Cold War relics the government forgot about but never quite abandoned. My job was simple. Drive the perimeter. Check the locks on buildings nobody entered anymore. Make sure nobody was trying to steal rusted equipment or use the isolation for something illegal. 8 hours of darkness and silence and my own thoughts, which, honestly, was exactly what I wanted. The temperature that night had dropped to 34 degrees. Desert cold isn't like other cold. It's sharp, clean, cuts right through your jacket and makes your bones ache. The air smelled like sage and dust and something else, something I could never quite name. Emptiness, maybe. The stars were so bright they looked unnatural, like holes punched in black canvas with something blazing behind it. No moon. Just stars and darkness and the crunch of gravel under my truck tires as I made my rounds. I'd been doing this job for 2 years, after everything fell apart. After Sarah died, my daughter, 15 years old, leukemia. We prayed. God, how we prayed, her mother and I, we begged every night. We had faith, we believed, we did everything right, and she died anyway, in a hospital room that smelled like disinfectant and false hope, holding my hand and asking me why God wasn't answering. I didn't have an answer for her then. I still don't. 6 months after we buried her, my wife left. Not because she stopped loving me, because she couldn't stand to look at me anymore. Couldn't stand the way I'd shut down, shut off, become this hollow thing that looked like her husband, but wasn't. I didn't blame her. I'd become a ghost haunting my own life, so I ran. Took this job in the middle of nothing, where I could disappear into the silence and not have to pretend anymore. Not have to pretend I still believed. Not have to pretend I was okay. Not have to pretend God was good or that any of this meant anything at all. That night, I was on my second lap around the perimeter. 23 minutes past 2 in the morning. I remember because I just checked my watch, counting down the hours until dawn like I did every shift. The radio was off. I preferred the silence. Just me and the engine and the darkness pressing against the windows. That's when I heard it. A sound like metal screaming. Like something massive being torn apart at a molecular level. It came from the east, beyond the ridge that separated the station from deeper desert. The sound lasted maybe 3 seconds, but it was so loud, so wrong, that I felt it in my chest, in my teeth. Then the light. Blue-white, brighter than lightning, bright enough that for half a second it was noon in the middle of night. It came from the same direction as the sound, beyond the ridge, and it painted everything in stark relief. The sagebrush, the rocks, the mountains in the distance, all of it frozen in that impossible light. Then darkness again. Deeper than before, like my eyes couldn't adjust. The ground trembled, not an earthquake. Something else. A single concussive thump that I felt through the truck's suspension, that rattled my equipment, that sent a flock of ravens I didn't know were there, bursting from the rocks in a panic of wings and cries. My radio scanner, the one I kept to monitor the empty frequencies just to have something to break the silence, suddenly erupted with static. Then voices. Clipped. Military. Coordinates being called out. Vehicle deployment. Airspace restriction. Something had crashed. Something big. And they were already responding. I should have driven away, should have gone back to the station, locked myself in the office, pretended I didn't see or hear anything. That's what a smart man would have done. That's what a man who wanted to keep his simple, quiet, dead-end job would have done. But I'd stopped being smart 3 years ago. And something in me, some part that one thought had died with Sarah, suddenly woke up. Curiosity. Or maybe just the desire to feel anything at all, even fear. I turned off my headlights and drove toward the ridge. The terrain got rougher. I had to slow down, navigate between boulders and dried creek beds. In the distance, I could see lights now. Headlights, multiple vehicles coming from the south, fast. And above them, the distinctive thrum of helicopter rotors, still distant but getting closer. I crested the ridge and saw it. The crash site was maybe 400 yards out, in a natural basin surrounded by rock formations. Even in the darkness, I could see the gouge in the earth, the still settling dust, the way the sagebrush had been flattened in a radius around the impact point. And the craft. It wasn't like the movies. Wasn't a clean saucer or some elegant vessel. It looked organic and mechanical at the same time, like something grown as much as built, maybe 30 feet long, embedded at an angle in the rock. Its surface was dark but seemed to shimmer, to shift, like oil on water. Parts of it were crumpled, damaged, and there was light leaking from the cracks. That same blue-white light I'd seen in the sky, but softer now, pulsing like a heartbeat. The military vehicles were maybe 5 minutes out, the helicopter maybe 10. I don't know what made me get out of the truck, don't know what made me scramble down into that basin, sliding on loose rock, my flashlight beam bouncing crazily. But I did. I moved toward the craft like I was being pulled, like something outside myself was making the decision. As I got closer, I heard something. A sound that made my skin crawl and my heart break at the same time. Whimpering. Crying. The sound of something in pain and terrified. There was an opening in the craft, a tear in the hull where the impact had ripped it apart. I shined my light inside, and that's when I saw him. Humanoid. That's the word that comes to mind, but it doesn't capture it. 2 arms, 2 legs, a head. But taller than any human, maybe 7 feet, and thin in a way that seemed impossible, like his bones were made of something lighter than ours. His skin, what I could see of it, was pale, almost luminescent, with patterns moving beneath the surface like circuitry or veins filled with light. He was trapped, pinned under part of the collapsed structure. And he was looking at me. His eyes. God, his eyes. Larger than human eyes, but not insect-like, not cold. They were filled with intelligence and fear and something else. Something that looked almost like recognition, like he'd been waiting for me. The military vehicles were cresting the ridge. I could hear the engines now, the shouts, the radio chatter getting louder on my scanner. I had maybe 90 seconds before they arrived, maybe less. I should have run. Should have gotten back in my truck and driven away and let whatever was about to happen, happen. Let the government take him. Let them do whatever they do with crashed extraterrestrials. It wasn't my problem. I'd stopped caring about anything beyond my own survival 3 years ago. But looking into those eyes, I saw something I recognized. I saw terror. I saw helplessness. I saw someone trapped and broken and facing something worse than death. I saw myself. Maybe that's why I dropped my flashlight. Maybe that's why I grabbed the piece of wreckage, pinning him, and pulled with everything I had, feeling something in my back pop, feeling my hands tear on the sharp edges. Maybe that's why, when he reached up with one long, impossible hand, I took it and pulled him free. His skin felt like touching static electricity, like every hair on my arm standing up at once. And he was heavier than he looked, solid despite how thin he seemed. I got him out of the craft and half-carried, half-dragged him toward the rocks at the edge of the basin, toward the old bunker system I knew was there from my Air Force days. Forgotten maintenance tunnels. No one remembered them anymore. No one except me. Behind us, floodlights erupted. Shouts. The helicopter hovering overhead, searchlight sweeping the crash site. We made it to the bunker entrance, a rusted metal door set into the hillside, hidden by shadow and scrub brush. I yanked it open, helped him inside, pulled the door shut behind us just as the searchlight swept past. In the darkness of that bunker, listening to his labored breathing and my own hammering heart, listening to the military setting up outside, I finally asked myself what the hell I'd just done. And in that same darkness, I heard a voice, not spoken aloud, not with sound, but in my head, clear as my own thoughts, but not my own thoughts. Thank you. I don't know why I did it. Don't know what made me risk everything for a being I didn't know, didn't understand. Maybe I saw my own brokenness reflected in those eyes. Maybe some part of me that still believed that Sarah's death hadn't completely killed knew this was important. Or maybe, just maybe, God hadn't abandoned me after all. The bunker smelled like rust and stale air and 50 years of abandonment. My flashlight beam cut through the darkness, revealing concrete walls streaked with mineral deposits, old equipment long since stripped or corroded into uselessness, and a passageway that stretched back into the hillside. I could hear the voices outside, muffled through the metal door and earth, barking orders, coordinating search patterns. The being I'd pulled from the wreckage was slumped against the wall, and in the flashlight's glow I got my first real look at him. He was breathing, but wrong. Not the steady rhythm of human breath, but something arrhythmic, stuttering, like his body was trying to remember how the process worked. That pale skin I'd glimpsed before was almost translucent up close, and underneath it I could see something moving. Not veins, exactly. More like rivers of light, dim now but pulsing weakly. Blue and silver, branching through his body like lightning frozen in flesh. His clothing, if you could call it that, looked like it had been grown rather than woven. It moved with him, responded to him, and where it had torn in the crash, the edges seemed to be trying to knit themselves back together. He turned those large eyes toward me, and I felt it again. That presence in my mind. Not invasive, not forcing its way in, but there, waiting, like someone standing at a door, asking permission to enter. I should have been terrified, should have been questioning my sanity. Instead, I felt oddly calm. Maybe it was shock. Maybe it was the fact that I'd been so numb for so long that even the impossible-made flesh sitting 3 feet from me, couldn't quite break through. I've carried so much fear for so long, the voice said in my mind, and I realized he was speaking to me. Not words, not language as I understood it, but meaning translated directly into thought. To crash here. To be hunted. I thought I would die alone. "Who's hunting you?" I asked aloud, my voice sounding harsh and strange in the confined space. "The military? Some of them." His head tilted slightly, and I noticed his neck was longer than a human's, more flexible. "But not all. Some of your kind serve willingly. Serve the emptiness. I don't understand." Outside, the voices were getting closer. I could hear boots on rock, equipment being deployed. The searchlights were sweeping in patterns now, methodical, professional. They'd find the bunker eventually. These mountains were honeycombed with old military infrastructure, but they had time and resources, and I had neither. I need approximately 12 of your hours, the being said. His breath was steadying slightly, but he still looked weak, diminished. To recalibrate. To heal. Without it, I will fade. Fade? Die. The concept came through with absolute clarity, and with it, a sense of sadness that felt ancient. I have come too far to die in darkness. I looked at the bunker door, at the rusty metal between us and a military operation that probably had authorization levels I couldn't begin to imagine. Looked at this impossible being who'd somehow crashed here, whom I'd somehow decided to save. There's a deeper section, one said finally, farther back. Old command center from the 60s. It's been sealed off, but I know how to get in. They probably don't even know it exists. Why are you helping me? It was the first real question he'd asked, and I didn't have a good answer. I sat there in the dust and the darkness, listening to my own breathing, feeling the weight of 3 years of grief pressing down on me like physical force. I don't know, I said finally. Maybe because you're the first thing in a long time that's made me feel anything. Maybe because I'm tired of walking away from things that matter. Or maybe I'm just crazy, and this is all a breakdown, and tomorrow I'll wake up in a psych ward somewhere. The being made a sound, soft and rhythmic, and I realized with a start that he was laughing. Or his equivalent of it. You are not unwell, Marcus Webb. How do you know my name? I can sense the shape of you, the grief you carry, the hollowness you have worn like armor. Your name is written in the spaces between your thoughts. That should have scared me, should have felt like violation. Instead, it felt like being seen for the first time in years. Really seen. Not the mask I wore, the going through motions version of myself I presented to the world, but the broken thing underneath. We need to move, I said, standing up, offering him my hand. Can you walk? He took my hand, and that sensation hit me again. Static electricity, warmth, something that tingled all the way up my arm. He was tall, impossibly tall, and had to hunch in the low-ceilinged corridor. We moved deeper into the bunker system, me leading with the flashlight, him following with one long-fingered hand on my shoulder for support. The deeper command center was through a blast door that had been sealed with a padlock sometime in the 80s. I'd found it during my first month on the job, exploring out of boredom, and I'd picked the lock because I had nothing better to do. Inside was a time capsule, old computer banks, dead for decades. Chairs bolted to the floor. Maps on the walls showing Soviet positions that didn't exist anymore. The air was stale but breathable. I helped him to one of the chairs. He sat or folded himself into something approximating sitting, and that stuttering breath began to slow, to stabilize. The light moving under his skin pulsed a bit brighter. We sat in silence for a while. Outside, distant and muffled, I could hear the search continuing, helicopters passing overhead, radio chatter. They were being thorough. "What are you?" I asked finally. "Where are you from?" He was quiet for a long moment, and I wondered if the question was offensive, or too complex, or if he was just too weak to answer. But then that presence touched my mind again. "Your species calls my kind many things. Angels, watchers, ancient astronauts. We are none of these and all of these. We were made by the same creator who made you, but we were made for different purpose. We observe, we witness, we document the unfolding." Document what? The war. The great conflict that your kind stands at the center of, mostly unknowing. A chill ran down my spine that had nothing to do with the cold air. What war? Before he could answer, a sound made us both freeze. Footsteps in the outer corridor. Boots, multiple sets. Voices echoing off concrete. Search every branch, every room. I want thermal imaging on these walls. If it's in here, we find it. The being reached out and placed his hand on my arm. Be still. They cannot sense us here. Not yet. Not yet. Some of them have learned to see as we see. Those who serve the hollow ones. Those who have traded their fullness for power. You keep saying that. Hollow ones. What does that mean? He turned those large eyes toward me, and something in his expression changed. Became grave. Heavy with knowledge that clearly brought him no joy. You call them demons, Marcus. But you do not understand what they truly are. You do not understand why they hunger for your kind, why they circle your world like predators, why this planet, this species, matters so much in the great unfolding. My mouth was dry. Then tell me. Outside, the footsteps were getting closer. I could see flashlight beams bouncing in the corridor beyond the blast door. My heart hammered against my ribs. I will tell you everything, the being said. But first, I must know. Why do your kind pray to them? Why do you invite them in, call to them, open yourselves to them as if they were servants of light? We don't, I said automatically. We pray to God, to Jesus. We fight against demons. We. Do you? His mental voice was gentle but insistent. Do you fight them, Marcus? Or do you feed them? I didn't understand, didn't want to understand, because something in his question touched a nerve, hit something I'd been avoiding for 3 years. The footsteps stopped just outside the blast door. I held my breath. The being sat perfectly still, that light under his skin dimming to almost nothing, like he was making himself smaller, quieter, harder to detect. "Nothing in this section," a voice said from the corridor. "Probably hasn't been opened in 40 years. Moving to the north branch." The footsteps retreated. I waited until I couldn't hear them any more before I breathed again. When I looked back at the being, he was watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read, something between pity and hope. "What did you mean?" I asked quietly. "About feeding them." "Rest now," he said. "I am weaker than I should be." The crash. The damage. I need time to recalibrate, and then I will show you. I will show you what the hollow ones truly are. What they want. Why they have been circling your species since before you built cities or wrote words. And I will show you why your grief, Marcus Webb, the emptiness you have worn for 3 years, is exactly what they hunger for most. He closed his eyes, or something like closing them. The light under his skin continued its slow pulse, like a heartbeat made visible. I sat there in the darkness of that forgotten command center, my back against the cold wall, listening to the distant sounds of the search continuing outside. My body was exhausted, but my mind was racing. Nothing made sense. Everything I thought I knew about reality had been shattered in the span of an hour. But underneath the confusion, underneath the fear and the impossibility of it all, I felt something else. Something I hadn't felt in so long I almost didn't recognize it. I felt awake. For 3 years I'd been sleepwalking through my life, going through the motions, waiting to die without actually having the courage to make it happen. And now, hiding in a bunker with an extraterrestrial being who spoke in my mind about demons and spiritual warfare, I felt more alive than I had since the day Sarah closed her eyes for the last time. I pulled out my phone. No signal down here, but I could see the time point 4017 a.m. The military would search for hours, maybe days. Eventually they'd leave, or scale back, or decide the crash was just a meteor or a satellite or some other mundane explanation. Or they'd find us. Find him. And I'd have to explain why I'd helped, why I'd hidden him, why I'd made this choice. I still didn't have a good answer. As I watched him rest, watched that alien light pulse beneath his skin, I thought about his question, about feeding demons, about the hollowness I'd worn for 3 years, about the rage and grief and despair I'd let consume me, and I wondered if I'd been fighting the wrong war all along. When I looked at the stars tonight, I heard his voice echo in my memory. When I looked at the stars, what did I see? Emptiness. Absence. the cold indifference of a universe that had taken my daughter and given me nothing in return. As I slipped into an uneasy sleep against that concrete wall, I realized I was about to learn that everything I believed about demons, about faith, about the nature of evil itself, was wrong. And that realization terrified me more than anything else that had happened in this impossible night. I woke to silence. Not the silence of the desert night, but the deeper silence of earth and stone and abandonment. For a moment I didn't know where I was. Then it all came rushing back. The crash. The being. The choice I'd made. My back ached from sleeping against concrete. My neck was stiff. I checked my phone, 1:11:34 a.m. I'd been out for 7 hours. Above us, daylight. Down here, the same darkness, broken only by the faint glow coming from the being across from me. He was awake, or whatever passed for awake. Sitting in that same chair, but different now, stronger. The light moving beneath his skin was brighter, more steady. Those large eyes were fixed on me with an intensity that made me uncomfortable. "You carry so much pain," he said into my mind. "I can see it surrounding you like a shroud, like a weight that grows heavier every day." I rubbed my face, tried to shake off the grogginess. "Yeah, well, losing a child will do that." He tilted his head in that strange way of his. "Yes. But it is not the loss itself that hollows you, Marcus. It is what you have chosen to do with the loss, the story you tell yourself about what it means." "Don't," I said, feeling anger flare hot in my chest. "Don't presume to tell me about my daughter. Don't presume to understand what I've been through." "I understand more than you know." His mental voice remained calm, patient. "Because I have watched your kind for millennia. Watched you grieve. Watched you choose. Watched the hollow ones circle your pain like sharks circle blood in water." I stood up, paced the small room. "You keep saying that. Hollow ones. Demons. You said you'd explain? So explain. What are they?" "Really?" He was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood, unfolding that impossible height, and approached me. When he reached out his hand, I hesitated. "I must show you," he said. "Words alone cannot convey what you need to understand. May I share my sight with you?" "What does that mean?" "I will let you see as my kind sees. See the layers of reality that your physical eyes cannot perceive. It will not harm you, but it will change you. Once you see, you cannot unsee." I thought about Sarah, about the 3 years I'd spent in darkness, about how I'd driven all the way out to the middle of nowhere to escape having to feel anything at all, and I realized that whatever this being wanted to show me, it couldn't be worse than the nothing I'd been living in. "Show me," I said. He placed his hand on my forehead. That static electricity sensation flooded through me, but different this time. Deeper. Like every cell in my body was suddenly vibrating at a frequency I'd never experienced. The room blurred. My vision doubled, tripled, then snapped into a clarity so intense it was almost painful. And I saw. The bunker was still there, solid and real, but now I could see through it. See the layers. The physical concrete and steel. The electromagnetic fields humming through old wiring. The thermal signatures of our bodies. And beyond that, something else. Something I had no words for. Threads. That's the closest I can come. Threads of light and shadow, woven through everything, connecting everything. I could see them stretching out through the walls, through the earth, spreading across the surface world like a vast web. Some threads pulsed with warm golden light. Others were dark, cold, moving with a hunger that made my stomach turn. "What you are seeing," the being said, "is the spiritual layer of your reality. The dimension that interpenetrates your physical world but remains invisible to your limited senses. Your mystics and prophets have always known it was there. They called it the kingdom, the veil, the world beyond. They were all describing the same truth. The vision shifted, pulled back. I saw the bunker from above, then the mountains, then the curve of the earth itself, and surrounding the planet, I saw them. Lights in the darkness. Millions of them. Billions. Some shining bright and steady. Others flickering, dimming. And among them, moving between them, were the shadows. They looked like holes in reality. Like places where light went to die. They had shape but no substance, form but no solidity. They moved like smoke, like oil, like something that existed between states of matter. And as I watched, I saw them attach themselves to the dimmer lights, saw them feed, saw those lights flicker and fade further. The hollow ones, the being said, what they were, what they became, and what they hunger for. The vision changed again. I saw something that might have been the beginning, or a metaphor for the beginning. Beings of pure light, countless and beautiful, existing in harmony with a source of light so bright I couldn't look directly at it. The Creator, I understood. The Source, God. And I saw some of those beings make a choice, saw them turn away from the light. But it wasn't rebellion, not the way I'd been taught. It was something worse, something more fundamental. They chose to empty themselves, the being said, to unmake their divine nature, to become inverse reflections of what they were created to be. Your scriptures call it the fall, but that word is too simple. They did not fall. They hollowed themselves out. They became voids, walking absences, spaces where the presence of the Creator could not exist. Why? I whispered, still caught in the vision. Why would they do that? Pride, envy, the desire to be separate from the source while still retaining power. But the cosmic law is absolute. To be separate from the source is to be empty. To be empty is to hunger. And so they became hunger itself, insatiable, eternal, desperate. The vision shifted again, and now I saw Earth, saw humanity, saw the golden threads connecting each person to that blazing source, threads of different thicknesses, different strengths, and I saw the hollow ones circling, always circling, looking for weaknesses. Your species is unique in all of creation, the being said. You exist at the intersection of spiritual and physical. You have physical bodies, but also eternal souls. You have free will, but also capacity for connection to the divine. You are, in a way my kind is not, made in the true image of the Creator, part flesh, part spirit, fully capable of choosing. Choosing what? Fullness or emptiness? Light or void? The hollow ones cannot force you, cannot violate your will, but they can influence, suggest, amplify. They whisper in your moments of weakness. They take your pain and twist it into poison. They take your grief and turn it into rage, your loneliness into despair, your doubt into certainty of abandonment. I saw it then, saw the patterns. A man losing his job, a shadow whispering that he was worthless, feeding on his shame until he couldn't see anything else. A woman betrayed, shadows amplifying her hurt until it became hatred that consumed her life. An addict reaching for the needle, shadows turning his pain into certainty that only oblivion could save him. They don't possess you, the being continued. Not usually. Not anymore. They learned millennia ago that possession reveals them, triggers resistance. Far better to influence, to whisper, to make you believe that the emptiness is your own, that the void is all there is, that you were made to be hollow. The vision zoomed in on me. I saw myself 3 years ago, in that hospital room, holding Sarah's hand, saw the golden thread connecting me to the source, bright and strong despite my grief. And I saw the moment it happened, The moment I chose, not consciously, not with words, but I chose to believe God had abandoned me, chose to believe her death meant I'd been betrayed, chose to wrap myself in that grief-like armor and push away everyone who tried to reach me. And I saw them come. The shadows, drawn to my pain like moths to flame, saw them attach themselves to me, feeding on my despair, my rage, my certainty of abandonment. Saw how they amplified everything dark inside me, made it louder, made it seem like truth. Saw how, for 3 years, I'd been slowly hollowing myself out, becoming exactly what they wanted. A void. An absence. A space where the light couldn't reach. The vision released me. I staggered back, gasping, tears streaming down my face. The bunker snapped back into normal sight, solid and mundane and real, but I could still feel it. The memory of what I'd seen. The truth of it. "I've been feeding them," I whispered, "for 3 years. Every day I chose the emptiness. I've been feeding them." "Yes," the being said gently, "but you have not been consumed. The thread connecting you to the source is dimmed, but not broken. Because even in your darkest moments, Marcus, you made small choices toward light. You did not harm yourself or others. You continued to work, to move, to exist. You helped a stranger in need despite your fear. These small choices matter more than you know." I sank back against the wall, head in my hands. Why doesn't God stop them? If He's all-powerful, if He created everything, why does He let them hunt us like this? Free will is not a suggestion, Marcus. It is the foundation of love. Real love cannot exist without choice, and choice cannot exist if the consequences are removed. The hollow ones chose to empty themselves. You choose every day whether to feed the void or fill yourself with light. The Creator does not stop you from choosing, because to do so would unmake the very thing that makes you capable of love. "That's not fair," I said. But even as I said it, I knew it was childish. No, it is not fair. It is something far more important. It is real. The war is real, Marcus. But so is your power to resist. Every soul that chooses love over hate, forgiveness over revenge, faith over despair, proves the hollow ones wrong, proves that humanity, despite being made of flesh, despite living in a fallen world, can choose fullness, can choose light, can reflect the Creator's nature by choice rather than by programming. I looked up at him. "And what about Sarah? What about my daughter?" His expression softened. "I watched her thread the night she died," he said quietly. "I was not there in body, but I see all things in the spiritual layer. I watched her thread grow brighter even as her body failed, watched her choose trust even in pain, watched her cross the veil with her light intact, undiminished, radiant. She's okay?" My voice broke. "She is more than okay. She is complete. The hollow ones cannot touch those who die in the light, Marcus. They can only feed on the living who choose emptiness. Your daughter made her choice. She chose to trust, to love, to remain full even as her body betrayed her. And now she exists in the presence of the Source, untouchable, eternal, more alive than she ever was in flesh." Something inside me cracked. A wall I'd built, stone by stone, for 3 years, suddenly fracturing. But I can't feel her. I can't reach her. Because you wrapped yourself in darkness, because you chose to believe God abandoned you, when the truth is, you abandoned yourself. You hollowed yourself out, and the hollow ones moved in to feast. They have been feeding on your grief, Marcus, using her death to empty you, to make you one of them. I was sobbing now, 3 years of grief pouring out. How do I stop? How do I fight them? Choose fullness, choose light, choose to believe that you were made for more than emptiness. It is that simple and that hard. And if I can't, then they win. Not forever. The Source is patient and pursues you even into darkness. But for this life, for the years you have left, you will exist as a hollow thing, growing emptier until the day you die. And I would mourn that, Marcus, because I did not come all this way, did not crash on this world, for you to remain empty. I looked at him through my tears. Why are you here? Really? Because your daughter prayed. From beyond the veil, in the presence of the source, she saw you drowning, and she asked for help, asked for a sign to reach you. I am that sign, Marcus Webb. My crash, your presence, this moment was no accident. You were meant to find me, meant to hear these truths, meant to choose one more time whether you will feed the void or embrace the light. In that moment, I felt something I hadn't felt in 3 years, something warm and full and utterly impossible. I felt hope. The silence that followed felt sacred. I sat there on the concrete floor of that forgotten bunker, tears drying on my face, feeling like I'd been hollowed out and filled back up with something new. Something I didn't have words for yet. The being, Azariel as I'd started thinking of him, though he'd never given me that name, stood quietly, giving me space to process. Outside, beyond the layers of earth and stone, I could hear machinery, distant but persistent. The search hadn't ended. If anything, it had intensified. They're not going to stop looking for you, I said finally, my voice rough from crying. No, Azariel agreed. Some of them serve purely human interests, national security and fear of the unknown. But others serve darker masters. They want me because my kind can see the hollow ones, can expose them, can reveal which humans have made compacts with the emptiness. Compacts? The word sent ice through my veins. You mean people work with demons? Willingly? More than you would believe. Not all who serve the void are possessed. Many are simply convinced. Promised power, knowledge, longevity. They are told that the emptiness is freedom. That disconnection from the source is liberation. They trade their fullness for influence in your physical world, never understanding what they truly surrender. He moved to the old blast door, pressed one long hand against the metal. I could see that light beneath his skin pulsing faster now, and I realized he was sensing something beyond the door, reading the layers of reality I could no longer see. 3 of them are in the search party, he said quietly. 3 who have made the trade. They can sense me, feel the signature of my kind. That is why the search continues even though logic suggests I have fled or died. They know I am here. They know I am close. Then we need to run. Get you somewhere safer. There is nowhere safer. My vessel is destroyed. My vessel is destroyed. My only hope is extraction, and my people will not come until they are certain the area is clear. Until the human authorities withdraw. How long will that take? Days. Perhaps longer. And I am not certain I have days. I stood, paced the small room. My mind was racing, trying to find solutions, trying to think through scenarios. It's what I'd done in the Air Force, troubleshooting problems, finding ways through impossible situations. But this was beyond anything I'd trained for. Tell me more, I said, about these people who serve the Hollow Ones. How does it work? How do they even make contact? Azariel turned from the door, those large eyes regarding me with something that might have been sadness. It begins small, he said, always small. A whisper in a moment of weakness. A suggestion during crisis. The Hollow Ones have learned patience over millennia. They do not demand worship. They do not appear in flames and darkness. They simply offer what humans want most in their emptiest moments. Recognition, power. The feeling of being special. Chosen. He moved back toward the center of the room, and as he spoke I felt that presence in my mind deepen, felt him showing me images to accompany his words. A politician stands alone in his office at 3 in the morning, career crumbling, family destroyed by scandal. The darkness whispers that he deserves better, that the rules were made to keep him down, that if he just makes one small compromise, takes one dirty donation, aligns with one corrupt interest, everything can be restored. Not because it is right, but because he deserves it. I saw it play out, saw the man make that choice, saw how one compromise led to another, each one easier than the last. Saw how the shadows gathered around him, feeding on his rationalizations, his justifications, his slow surrender of integrity. Within a year he was powerful again. Within 5 he was untouchable, but his light had dimmed to almost nothing. A scientist discovers something profound, something that could change the world, but the establishment rejects her, mocks her. She loses funding, position, reputation. In her bitterness, the darkness whispers that they fear her brilliance, that the truth threatens their control, that if she just falsifies one dataset, exaggerates one result, allies with those who will fund her regardless of ethics, she can prove them all wrong. Again I saw it unfold. The brilliant mind slowly corrupted, not by malice but by wounded pride, amplified into obsession, publishing false data, covering mistakes, eventually causing harm through willful blindness, all while believing she was serving truth. The shadows fed and grew stronger. A preacher stands before his congregation, charismatic and beloved, but privately struggling with doubt. The darkness whispers that he doesn't need to believe, just to perform, that the money and influence are tools he can use for good, that his doubts are actually sophistication, that he can shepherd the flock without truly believing in the shepherd. One sermon where he doesn't quite mean it. One message crafted for effect rather than truth. One compromise, then another. I saw this one too. Saw the preacher become a performer, a businessman, a manipulator of emotions. Saw how he led thousands while being utterly empty himself. And the worst part was he never noticed, never realized he'd become a hollow thing wearing the costume of faith. "Stop," I said, feeling sick. "I understand." "Do you?" Azrael's mental voice was gentle but insistent. "Because this is not about condemnation, Marcus. This is about understanding how it works, how the void spreads. Not through obvious evil, not through violence and horror, but through small compromises, through pain twisted into pride, through wounds weaponized into wounds inflicted on others. And these people in the military? The ones looking for you? They've done this? Made these compromises? They have gone further. They have made conscious compacts, invited the hollow ones into their decision-making, into their strategies. They believe they are using dark forces for national security. They do not understand that they are the ones being used, that every collaboration makes them emptier, makes them more like the things they think they command. A sound echoed through the corridor outside, closer than before. Voices. Equipment being set up. Seismic sensors, one voice said, tinny through what must have been a radio. If anything's moving in these tunnels, we'll know. Azrael's light pulsed brighter for just a moment, then dimmed again. His equivalent of taking a sharp breath. "They are adapting," he said. "Learning. The 3 who serve the void are teaching the others how to hunt my kind. What happens if they find you? They will take me to a facility designed to contain and study beings like myself. They will attempt to extract information, to learn how my kind sees, how we travel, how we perceive the spiritual layer of reality. And they will share that information with their true masters, the Hollow Ones, who will use it to hunt more of my kind, to blind the witnesses. We can't let that happen. No. But the choice may not be ours to make. I thought about Sarah, about what Azrael had shown me, about her praying from beyond the veil, asking for help to reach me. about how this impossible being had crashed here, had been found by me, had been saved by me in a moment where I'd acted against every instinct of self-preservation I'd cultivated for 3 years. You said she prayed for me, I said quietly. That she asked for a sign. Yes. Can you show me? Can you let me see her? Azariel was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his mental voice carried weight I hadn't heard before, sorrow and wisdom mixed together. I cannot show you her directly. The veil between physical and spiritual, between life and what comes after, is not mine to pierce in that way. But I can show you her prayer, the moment she reached out across the dimensions, if you wish to see it. Yes, I said without hesitation. Please. He approached me again, placed that long hand on my forehead. The static electricity sensation flooded through me, and the vision opened. I saw Sarah not as she was in the hospital, wasted and pale and dying, but as she was after, radiant, complete, whole in a way she'd never been in physical form. She existed in a space that was and wasn't space, surrounded by light that was and wasn't light, more real than anything I'd experienced in the physical world. And she was looking back, looking toward something. Toward me, I realized, toward the world she'd left behind. I saw myself through her eyes, saw what I'd become in the 3 years since her death. A dim, flickering light surrounded by shadows that fed and fed and fed. Saw how close I was to being extinguished entirely, and I felt her grief, her helplessness, her desperate love for the father she couldn't reach. Then I heard her prayer, not words exactly, but intention translated into the language the Source understands. A plea, a desperate hope. Send him something he cannot deny. Something that will break through the walls he's built. Something that will show him he is not abandoned, that I am not lost, that the darkness is a lie. And I felt the response, felt the source, that blazing presence I couldn't look at directly, acknowledge her prayer. Felt the ripples of consequence spread out across dimensions, felt how those ripples touched Azariel's vessel, caused a malfunction, led to the crash, led to this moment. The vision released me, and I staggered back, overwhelmed. You crashed because of her, I whispered. Because she prayed for me. I crashed because the Source answered her prayer, and I was willing to be the answer. My mission brought me near your world already. The malfunction was not random, but I chose to allow it. Chose to fall here, to this place at this time, knowing you would be the one to find me. That is how the Source works, Marcus. Not through violation of will, but through the willingness of those who serve to become answers to prayer. I couldn't speak, couldn't process the enormity of it. My daughter, existing in some higher dimension, had prayed for me. And the God I'd thought had abandoned me had answered, had sent me something I couldn't deny. Something impossible and real and utterly transformative. I've been so blind, I said, so angry, so certain I'd been betrayed. You were in pain. The Hollow Ones used that pain against you. This is their strategy. This is how they win. Not through force, but through convincing you that emptiness is all there is. How do I fight them? Really? You said choose fullness, but what does that actually mean? It means precisely what it sounds like. Every moment, every choice, you decide. Will you feed the void or embrace the light? Will you isolate or connect? Will you despair or hope? Will you rage or forgive? Small choices, Marcus, hundreds of them every day. That is the war. Not dramatic battles, but ordinary moments where you choose what to fill yourself with. And my ex-wife, the years I've wasted, the damage I've done, cannot be undone, but can be redeemed. Healing is possible. Reconnection is possible. The thread linking you to the Source is dimmed but intact. You can choose to strengthen it. Choose fullness. Choose to become again what you were made to be. Outside, the voices were getting closer. I could hear equipment being moved, sensors being placed. They were narrowing the search. They would find us. It was only a matter of time. How long until your people can extract you? Unknown. Hours at minimum. Perhaps a day. We don't have a day. No, we do not. He looked at me with those impossible eyes, and I saw acceptance there. Readiness not for death, but for whatever came next. He had done what he came to do, delivered his message, shown me the truth. If he was captured now, if he died now, his purpose had been fulfilled. But something in me rebelled against that acceptance. Something that had been dead for 3 years suddenly roaring back to life. No, I said. You didn't come all this way, didn't crash here, didn't show me all of this, just to be captured. There has to be a way. Perhaps. Or perhaps my capture is part of a larger purpose I cannot yet see. The Source works in ways that transcend individual outcomes. That's not good enough, I said, surprised by the conviction in my own voice. Sarah prayed for you to reach me. You did. But I don't think the story ends here. I think maybe, just maybe, I'm supposed to get you out of this. Maybe that's my choice. Maybe that's how I start filling myself with light again. Azariel tilted his head in that strange way. You would risk everything? For me? You risked everything for me, I said simply. Seems fair. And in that moment, in that forgotten bunker deep beneath the Nevada desert, I made a choice, not to feed the void, not to surrender to despair, but to fight, to choose fullness, to become again what I was made to be. The war was real, but so was my power to resist, and the Hollow Ones were about to learn that Marcus Webb was done being prey. The plan was insane, but insane was all we had. I'd spent 2 years working security at this facility. I knew every road, every approach, every blind spot in what little surveillance remained functional. And I knew something else. The old Air Force tunnel system didn't just connect to this bunker. It spread out for miles, remnants of Cold War paranoia. Most of it collapsed or flooded, but some of it still passable if you were desperate enough. There was an exit point 3 miles northeast. An old ventilation shaft that opened onto BLM land, unmarked, forgotten. If we could reach it, if Azariel could stay hidden and mobile for the journey, we might have a chance. Can you walk? I asked. Really walk, not just lean on me. He stood, testing his balance. The light beneath his skin pulsed steadily now, stronger than before, but still not what it had been when I'd first pulled him from the wreckage. I can move, he said, but I cannot mask my presence from those who serve the void. They will sense me if I get too close. Then we stay ahead of them. I gathered what little I had. My flashlight, my phone, useless for calls, but the GPS still worked offline. A bottle of water I'd left in my truck that felt like it belonged to another lifetime. We moved to the blast door. Beyond it, the corridor was silent, but I could hear activity in the distance. Methodical, patient, professional. We slipped out, moving deeper into the tunnel system rather than back toward the entrance. Every 50 feet I'd stop, listen, make sure we hadn't been detected. Azariel moved with surprising grace, despite his height, despite the low ceilings forcing him to hunch. That light under his skin had dimmed to almost nothing, and I realized he was doing it consciously, making himself harder to see in both physical and spiritual dimensions. The tunnels were a maze, but I'd explored them during long, empty night shifts when I had nothing better to do than walk and think and try not to think. Left at the collapsed section, right at the junction marked with faded radiation warnings from an era when nuclear annihilation felt imminent. Straight through the flooded corridor where ice-cold water soaked through my boots and reached my knees. Behind us I heard voices echo through the tunnels, closer than they should have been. Movement detected in Sector 7. All teams converge. Authorization to use force if necessary. We moved faster. The tunnel narrowed, angling upward now, centuries of mineral deposits making the floor treacherous. My flashlight beam bounced off wet stone. Azariel's breathing had changed again, that stuttering quality returning. The exertion was costing him. How much further? His mental voice was strained. Half a mile. Maybe less. We pushed forward. The tunnel opened into a larger chamber, a junction point where 3 different corridors met. Old equipment lay rusted in corners. Cables hung from the ceiling like dead vines. And standing in the center of the chamber, backlit by his own flashlight, was a man. Military uniform. Sidearm. But something wrong about him. Something that made my skin crawl even before Azariel's hand gripped my shoulder in warning. "He serves them," Azariel said urgently in my mind. "One of the 3. He is more void than man now." The soldier smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Those eyes were flat, empty, like windows into nothing. "Marcus Webb," he said, his voice pleasant, conversational. "Former Air Force, exemplary service record. Daughter deceased. Marriage dissolved. Current occupation, night security at a decommissioned facility. You've had a hard few years, haven't you?" I didn't respond, didn't move. Every instinct screamed danger. "We just want the asset," the soldier continued, gesturing casually at Azariel. "Turn it over, and you walk away. No charges, no questions. You can go back to your quiet life, your simple job, your comfortable numbness." The way he said numbness, like it was a gift, like it was something to aspire to. "No," I said. The soldier's smile widened. "You don't understand what you're protecting. These things, they're not angels. They're not holy. They're witnesses, observers. They see everything, record everything, report back to their master. They're spies in a war you can't comprehend." "I comprehend just fine," I said. "You made a deal, traded your soul for power, and now you're so empty you can't even see it." Something flickered in those dead eyes, anger. But under the anger, something else. A flash of the man he'd been before, trapped and screaming behind the void that had consumed him. "You think you're better than me?" His voice lost its pleasant tone. "You think your 3 years of self-pity and isolation make you righteous? You've been feeding them just like I have, Webb. The only difference is I got something for it. You just suffered." He was right. And that's what made it hurt. 3 years I'd fed the void, fed my grief and rage to the hollow ones without even knowing. But I'd made a choice in that bunker. Chosen fullness. Chosen light. "I'm done feeding them," I said quietly. The soldier laughed, harsh and bitter. "It's too late for that. You think one moment of clarity erases years of emptiness? You think helping an alien escape makes you a hero? You're nothing, Webb. Just like I'm nothing. Just like we're all nothing in the end." "Marcus," Azariel's voice urgent in my mind, "he is trying to spread the void to you. His words are weapons. Do not let them in." But I could feel it. The pull. The seductive whisper underneath the soldier's words. The suggestion that nothing mattered. That hope was delusion. That we were all just dying slowly in an indifferent universe. I thought about Sarah. About her prayer. About the source responding. About how Azariel had crashed here specifically because I'd needed saving. About how I'd made a choice to help a stranger despite my fear. "You're wrong," I said, and I felt the truth of it like warmth spreading through my chest. "We're not nothing. We're battlegrounds. We choose every day what to feed, and I choose light." The soldier's expression twisted. He reached for his sidearm. Azariel moved faster than I would have thought possible. That long arm extended, hand making contact with the soldier's forehead. Light blazed between them, bright enough that I had to shield my eyes. The soldier screamed, a sound of rage and terror and something that might have been recognition. When the light faded, the soldier was on his knees, weapon forgotten, hands covering his face, sobbing. "I can see," he whispered. "Oh God, I can see what I've become." "What did you do?" I asked Azariel silently, showed him himself, as he truly is, without the lies the hollow ones told him, without the rationalizations, just truth. "We have to go," I said aloud. "The others will have heard that." The soldier looked up at me, tears streaming down his face. "They're coming. 6 more. 3 like me. You won't make it." "We'll make it," I said, surprised by my own certainty. We left him there, kneeling in the darkness, and ran. The tunnel sloped upward now, steeper, harder. My lungs burned, my legs screamed. Behind us, shouts echoed, flashlight beams, the sounds of pursuit. The ventilation shaft appeared ahead, a vertical climb with rusted ladder rungs embedded in concrete. Daylight above, impossibly bright after hours in darkness. "Go," I told Azariel. "Climb." He looked at me with those large eyes. "You are coming with me. Someone has to slow them down. Buy you time. Your people are coming, right? They'll extract you? Marcus, you do not have to do this." "Yeah," I said, "I do. This is my choice. Fullness, not emptiness. Light, not void. This matters, you matter. And I'm done running from things that matter." The pursuit was close now, maybe 30 seconds behind us. I could hear their voices, could hear the 3 emptied ones directing the others. Azariel placed his hand on my shoulder. "Thank you, Marcus Webb, for choosing, for saving me, for letting your daughter's prayer be answered through you. Tell her," I said, voice breaking, "if you see her somehow, tell her I understand now. Tell her I'm going to be okay. She already knows." He climbed. That impossible grace, even injured, even exhausted, up the shaft, toward the daylight, toward extraction and escape. I watched until he disappeared into the brightness above. Then I turned to face what was coming. They emerged from the tunnel. 6 of them, just as the kneeling soldier had said, 3 with empty eyes, 3 just following orders, all of them armed, all of them trained. I stood at the base of the shaft, unarmed, exhausted, just a broken 58-year-old man who'd spent 3 years feeding his grief to demons. But I wasn't that man anymore. "Stand down," one of them ordered. "On your knees, hands behind your head." "No," I said simply. They could have shot me, should have shot me. But something held them back. Maybe curiosity. Maybe the 3 void-touched ones wanted to make an example. Maybe the source was buying Azariel time. "You're protecting an extraterrestrial asset," one of the empty-eyed ones said. "That's treason." "I'm protecting a friend," I said. "That's faith." Above us, I heard it. A sound like air being displaced, like reality folding. I didn't look up, didn't need to. I knew his people had come. The soldiers looked up, weapons raised, but there was nothing to shoot at. Just empty desert sky, just the wind and the sun and the vast blue stretching to infinity. Azariel was gone. They took me then. Zip ties on my wrists, hours of interrogation, threats, promises, psychological games. I told them nothing, not because I was strong, but because I'd made my choice, and nothing they could do would unmake it. 3 days later, they let me go. No charges, no explanation. Just a quiet warning to forget everything. As if I could. I went back to my trailer. Back to my job. But everything had changed. I called my ex-wife that night. First time in 18 months. She answered on the 4th ring. Suspicious, guarded. We talked for 20 minutes. It wasn't reconciliation, not yet, but it was a start. It was choosing connection over isolation, choosing fullness. I started noticing things. The way despair would try to creep in at 3 in the morning. The whispers suggesting that nothing mattered, that I was alone, that the void was all there was. But now I could see them for what they were. Lies. Weapons. The hollow ones trying to reclaim the territory they'd lost. And I made different choices, small ones, every day. Chose to call someone instead of isolating. Chose to hope instead of despair. Chose to believe I was made for more than emptiness. 3 months after Azrael left, I was on night patrol. Same desert, same stars. And I saw something in the sky. Not a craft, just a star that pulsed, just once, like a signal. And I heard her voice, not in my mind. Not audible, but somewhere deeper. In my soul. I'm proud of you, Dad. I stood there in the desert darkness, tears streaming down my face, and I knew it was real. Knew she was beyond the veil, in the light, untouchable and complete. Knew that the hollow ones had failed, that I'd chosen fullness, that the war was real, but so was my power to resist. So let me tell you something. Right now, wherever you are, whatever you're facing, you're in the middle of a war you probably don't even know is happening. The hollow ones are real. They feed on your despair, your rage, your loneliness, your certainty that nothing matters. They whisper that the void is all there is, but they're lying. You were made to be full. Full of love, purpose, connection to something vast and holy and real. And every time you choose hope over despair, forgiveness over revenge, connection over isolation, you prove them wrong. You win the war, one small choice at a time. The demons are real, but so is the light that defeats them. And now, when I look at the stars, I don't see emptiness anymore. I see witnesses. I see my daughter among them, still praying for me, still full of the light that the hollow ones can never touch. And that changes everything.